Welcome to ServiceSharp. This is a podcast all about ServiceNow. We'll be talking strategy, architecture, technology, and everything ServiceNow. This podcast is not affiliated with ServiceNow. The opinions expressed are our own. We're just people that are very passionate about the platform. Join us for every episode.
All right, welcome back to ServiceSharp. This is Jason Gibson. With me today, we have, of course, Randy Haas and Brent Peters. We have a new special guest today, and that's David. David, I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here. I'm David Stepford. I'm an ITX architect with Accenture. I've been out there trying to help people understand all of the components within ITSM and ITOM and ITBM and ITAM, all of the ITs, and help them understand what that means when they all start to work together and what those advantages look like.
Awesome. And of course, you know me, Jason Gibson, I'm kind of old hat here. And Brent also, the guru of ServiceNow, he's here. And our fearless leader, Randy. So we're all here having a good time. I wanted to start to talk about service mapping and application mapping. And David has a lot of experience with that and the understanding of it. David, will you kind of explain what service mapping and application mapping is?
Oh, yeah, you bet. So ServiceNow built its business as a way to help companies understand that what IT is delivering is some form of service to the business. And as this starts to expand into, well, how do you run IT service management? You get lots of underlying frameworks that help people understand how to run the process, like ITIL within ITSM that helps differentiate between what constitutes an incident or a problem or a change that then affects what those services are. Then you throw in discovery that helps you understand what your infrastructure looks like. Well, guess what? Now you need to map the service level thinking of this is what I'm doing to the business into each of the individual components in infrastructure that are necessary in order to deliver that service to the business. So if you think of something extremely simple like a WordPress website, you take the address of that website as the entry point for service mapping. And then ServiceNow service mapping will then try to investigate what that means. It starts by ensuring that that address resolves to an IP address. It'll attempt to find out what kind of server that's running on. It'll find out what that address is doing. So it begins to describe the underlying functions and then tries to put the pieces back together. So you have an Apache server running on Linux that then has a configuration that indicates that it has some form of a SQL backend running on a different server, and it puts all of those together, and then that's your service map.
Okay, and so is it for those of you that know and understand this may be a little basic, but is it top down? Is it go from the highest level, application mapped all the way down to, the server or to the computer using it? How does that work with the structure?
Well, traditional discovery actually goes out and takes a broad list of all of the IP addresses that it should look for, and then tries to find out what they are. And that ends up being horizontal, right? I'm going to go find this server and I'm going to find out what's on it. I'm going to go find the next server and I'm going to find out what's on it. And what you get is this broad landscape of what those things are. Service mapping is top down in that the idea is that each individual component and its purpose is noticed and understood and then mapped. and then connect it in a hierarchical model where you do understand at the top you've got the Apache web server. Below that you may have a SQL server, and then supporting each of them you have your actual physical infrastructure. And I'm skipping over, like virtual machines and some of the other components that can run there. But simplistically, the traditional discovery is horizontal. Service mapping is considered as vertical, trying to put each of those layers together into a map that actually makes sense from top to bottom.
Okay. And so once you get all this map, how does this help the organization? What does it do?
Well, actually, it does a number of things. I would start by helping you understand that significantly the reason that you have a CMDB is to help you know what it is that you've got in order to deliver that service to the business. I mean, even if you think about that horizontal discovery, just knowing what you've got can change your mind about what it is that you need to do. Right. What service mapping does is it helps you combine the ITSM processes into helping understand what that impact is. So if you've got one team that runs your SQL organization, and you've got another team, or even maybe just another person that's not in the same room down the hall that runs your Apache, and then yet another guy who actually wants them to work together in order to deliver a WordPress site, then you need to know that the one guy down the hall that's decided he's going to take down the SQL server in order to repair it or in order to upgrade it is actually affecting the site that this WordPress owner actually is trying to deliver. So if you don't know how these components work together, then you're not going to be able to deliver your service at the level that the business side is actually looking to have that delivered. And the service mapping actually automates the ability of an organization to be able to automatically find out how they're held together instead of having all three people sitting in the same room and say, okay, what are you running? What is it running on? What operating system, what SQL version, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like writing it all down and then having it on a piece of paper that you say, okay, now when I'm changing this, I understand what these things mean. The communication between each of those people or each of those teams becomes a lot smoother. The business impact as you're beginning to try to operate your business.
So, operational intelligence, right? So the ability to understand what's going on in your systems to make good operational decisions. Would that be kind of a good, explanation of what that part of it does?
Well, now you're throwing the doors even wider. There are some significant advantages when it's not just knowing how these things operate together and how that supports from an ITSM thinking. The ability to run automated monitors underneath those systems to indicate whether or not each component is healthy. So you'll have infrastructure monitoring devices that will monitor the physical server hardware and the operating system, make sure that there's enough disk space, enough memory, enough CPU. You'll have other monitors like at the SQL layer that will help you understand whether or not the indexes are running correctly, the headspace for the actual components on top are consuming the right amount of CPU and memory, and then you'll have another monitor to find out whether or not the Apache server is accepting requests. All of these monitors held together can send that data through event management to be able to understand. Right. So now you've got more automation for understanding the health of that service, and it's not just that you're supporting incident problem change, but you're actually able to think a little bit more proactively.
Well, and I think one of the one of the most beautiful parts of this is the fact that you can use this data to reduce the number of incidents, to reduce the number of problems, reduce the number of issues you have with change management. Basically, reduce the number of outages, those kind of things, because you can utilize the data you're getting to understand that we have events, and those events can sometimes be handled, and then nobody knows that you are running 80%, or 90%, capacity, and you threw a warning. Well, that warning can turn into fixing a problem before it even gets to be a major outage.
Absolutely. Now, and that's kind of the beauty of ServiceNow running all of these components together, is that those events, when you cross some critical threshold, become alerts. You can handle alerts individually, say, disk space filling up on a hard drive, but you can use those alerts to take an automated action where it reaches back out, where ServiceNow can then reach into that server and delete all the temporary files, and then poof, you don't even have a human that's trying to remediate this. Right. You actually have the system responding together. Now, we'll go back to service mapping, where it becomes it can become even more complex, because even monitoring tools can take simplistic actions like this specific process fails, restart it, and don't give up until it fails 3 times in a row. But with service mapping, you can see more context, like the CPU on the application server is running high because you've got a significant load there that puts pressure on the SQL server. And then because these two are not individual events, but they are both focused on the same service, you get to see within event management and operational intelligence that these things are related to a single item, and it's entirely possible that they're related to exactly the same thing. Maybe there's nothing wrong with the SQL server because the application server is overloaded. And right. And by the way, vice versa, maybe there's nothing wrong with the application server. It's that the SQL server was under load. And you can see these over time, and all of that information, including the guy from down the hall calling up the service desk saying, "Hey, wait a minute, I can't get access to this site." Actually, all of those things are related, and you get to see that in a single console. So you don't have 5 teams looking at the same issue. You can only call in the ones that are necessary, and you know how to call them early, and you can see the leading edge of those issues.
Yeah. And that's, I think, we talk about, I can't tell you how many times we've talked about the platform, and one thing builds on another. Service mapping is something that really needs it to be well flushed out on incident and change. So you're not starting with service mapping. I mean, some companies do, but you need change and incident and, a good solid CMDB and, good discovery for all of this to work well together, and that's where people miss it. They want to piecemeal parts of what they want and not other things, and then expect it to work like it was designed.
Well, and I'll even go one step further. One of the major issues that we see a lot of enterprises engage in is they are reacting to, well, wait a minute, I need more visibility. Well, wait a minute, I know that I'm having problems in this area, so I'm just going to invest in understanding what those problems are. And they don't actually take a step back and ask the harder question: what specifically is it that I'm trying to accomplish? Right. So a lot of companies will measure the mean time to detect and the mean time to repair, and use these as metrics for maturity within their IT organization. How fast can you repair it? When really the underlying metric is service availability. Which services are important? How available do they need to be? And are we actually investing in making those services available the way they need to be? Now, decomposing that into how you know what to start tackling first, it might be that you fail in detecting something early. It might be that you fail in repairing it quickly. It also might be that you're failing because you've got a bunch of teams that are tackling issues that you don't really care about that much. So you've got to make sure that you know what it is that you're trying to accomplish and why.
So by using this stuff, you can. I don't know a whole lot about this part. I know discovery, all that, but by mapping your services, I see it as, you're going from like a reactive. You can start learning from moving from a reactive IT to like a proactive IT by doing knowing what service is affecting what, and all that kind of stuff. So I can see where this would really help move you along quicker, because you can do service mapping manually, but I can see where this could make it so much faster and so much easier to keep up to date, because getting the people that know what's what and where, and everything, getting them to actually keep it up to date is just, it's a fun thing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, there are a lot of people that struggle with that. I mean, I think some of this is partly trying to elevate that game, right? I mean, yes, you're right. You start to change your mindset from reactive to proactive, but then there's also the added step of let's go from proactive to complete robotic process automation. Right. Where these components are able not just to self-heal, but that you are able to see that broader landscape. Because there's a lot of data out there that can be brought to bear to create that automation that then gets you out of that, even out of that proactive side. And don't forget that some of this is also having good process. Mm-hmm. Yes. So a lot of people think about incident, but problem management is how you get your business accepted workaround to be either automated, or you actually get a real fix installed, which means that you've got to keep chasing the items that are really important to business. And so good problem management doesn't go away. In fact, it becomes more critical. It becomes the place where businesses save the most money, because the automation comes out of knowing really what's going on and applying resources to either fixing it or creating something that takes away the issue before it happens.
Right.
All right.
I see it happen a lot where problem is not focused on, where it is an afterthought, and it doesn't get utilized like it should. I've worked for and worked with a significant number of organizations over the years, and I've never seen one done, an implementation done as well as it could be. And have you found that the case as well, that we get to a point to where now it's time to automate, or we just haven't gotten far enough or mature enough? I've been told our organization is just not mature enough right now. We need to bring them along slowly. I've heard all kinds of stuff. What is your experience with that? Have you found some organizations that have done 90% of it right?
Well, actually, that's kind of a funny question. I'll say yes to all of it. I will say that typically I find that organizations are stuck somewhere. They don't always know where they're stuck, but they know that something is not working the way that they want it to work. They're not certain what that is. They're not certain how to fix it. So a lot of that means that coming in and running an assessment to ensure that you have the right level of understanding about what it is that's not performing the way that they want to perform. A large number of organizations And in fact, I would say every organization I've ever been to, they're all trying to do the right thing.
Right.
A lot of times they end up getting a little bit lost along the way. And mostly that's an organizational problem. People end up being entrenched in the things that they do, and they can't see the landscape. And really, to go back to talking about service mapping, sometimes service mapping actually gets a number of people within the organization that aha moment to go, oh my goodness, I had no idea that thing was causing that problem, because it's not visible in that one context. Now, because again, if you have your Windows admins and your Unix admins, in different rooms, they don't know necessarily that there are two different systems running the same service, and the ability to have that vision to what it is that's gone wrong is a lot of times a little bit of a maturity curve for each organization to say, okay, where is it that I need to go, and how do I need to get there?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's where you guys, where an external company or somebody that is outside the organization, outside of the core organization, can come in and do a better job with analyzing that and putting that all together. That's the one nice thing I like about ServiceNow is you can get entrenched, but there are enough people out there, like Randy and you, that know enough about that portion of it to give you good advice. My only thing is I would say don't be afraid to reach out and bring somebody in to give you that advice. And sometimes that's the best money you can spend, even above things like, they'll spend money on development. They'll spend money on, sometimes you need to spend money on somebody to give you a good, as you would say, cleaning. And you go through, you see what needs to be done. You say, okay, we've got this figured out. Here's your path. Here's where I think you should be going. And like you, I mean, that you do a lot of that, right? When you're talking to customers.
Oh my goodness, yes. The one thing that every employee has in common at your business is that they all have a vision inside your business, and very few of them are going to have a vision outside of the business. And it is an organizational issue of how many businesses can somebody inside your organization visit? Consultants actually talk with multiple businesses even within the same week, right? So, So recognizing where other people are, have veered, recognizing all of the things that can be done, sometimes must have some form of an outside vision. And the other thing that consultants tend to bring, and I'm not just talking about consultants because I am one, but is that a lot of times inside your organization, you have not hired the expertise within the platform to be able to know everything that the platform does. Getting that level of expertise inside is extremely difficult.
Right. Exactly. And ServiceNow is one of those tools that I've seen so many people say, well, you have so much great documentation out there, and they say that it's all low code, no code. Why don't we just let everybody do what they want? And so often do I find that turned out really horribly. So it really does pay to get the right expertise. And it doesn't have to be an FTE. You can get your expertise from, a company like Sharpstone or, an external consultant of some sort. You can bring them in to give you that kind of solid, architecting, if you would. But it does pay to go ahead and bring somebody in and know where your shortcomings are.
Well, I'll also throw in that organizational change is extremely difficult to affect from within the organization. So if you want to get better, and you know that entails that something has to change inside, you really are you almost require bringing someone in from the outside in order to understand that this component, sure, you can get your developers to do some low code, no code processing, but they tend to duplicate their current processes instead of take what's already out there, understand the framework of what's already been done and what either best practices or at least leading practices look like within the industry, to say, actually, from the outside, we're going to tell you need to change your processes to do this as well.
Right. Exactly. So do you find when talking to the organizations as a consultant that you get quite a bit of resistance, or are they pretty, open to that kind of change?
It's actually all over the map. I will tell you that no matter what the organization is, even organizations of relatively small size, you should have enough diversity that some people will be resistant to change, and that's going to be healthy. And what you need is the organization to be able to recognize what change might be necessary and how they want to affect that change, to ensure that when you actually have that call to change, that you're able to use some form of organizational change management to say, okay, everybody, we're all going to get on the bus and we're all going to go this way. So even the resistance and those barriers need to be broken down. A lot of that has to do with, communication and making sure that everybody understands the reason for change. And I'm not an organizational change management expert, but we do use them in almost every engagement, because you have to help explain to people, why, when, how, and what the actual urgency to that change, what that really looks like.
Well, and to be honest, it has to be from the top down. Any kind of organizational change has to be spearheaded by the top of the leadership, whether it's the CEO or the CIO. The top leadership needs to, be a part of that change, or it's kind of, it's going to be a difficult, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but if you don't have that buy-in, it'll be a very difficult time to get where you're wanting to go.
I will agree about 99% with that. I have seen one organization in my time that was frighteningly efficient at being led from the bottom. That's cool. Where the listening needs to happen to the people who are on the front line, because they're the ones that actually have the best data,
right?
And they need to be able to adjust based on what that actually looks like. However, even within that organization, nobody would change without permission from the top. It's right. Not necessarily driven, but it absolutely must be supported and explicitly supported from the top. Otherwise, no organization will change. All it takes is one person at the top saying no, and then everybody will stop.
Yeah,
I think that's an important distinction to make. That to get really, really efficient at being an agile company, people throw around that term all the time, and they don't know what it means. But to really get efficient at that, you've got to do that. You've got to take data from where it's the most fresh and the most accurate, and let that be the driver for what you're doing. And to do that, you've got to establish those channels of communication and trust. It really comes down to trust, creating a culture where if I'm at the lower level, I don't fear that if I bring an improvement, it's going to lead to my job being phased out. And at an upper level, I've got to be able to encourage people to come up with ideas, even if they're not great. Just because it's in that churn, you're going to generate 100 ideas, and one of them is going to be a $1 million or $1 billion idea, but 99 of them have to be tried, kind of thing, as you're moving along.
I'll pile on, because that's what I love to do. That level of trust from the top to the bottom is so critical to running an efficient organization. It's not just that the bottom needs to trust that they've got support from the top, but it also means that the top needs to trust the bottom that they're going to be able to lead in the right direction as well. Because in an organization where that communication doesn't exist, I can guarantee that they will be struggling within their industry. I've never seen one. I've never seen one that is entirely run from the top down, expand to be something that actually leads the industry. They can often lead for a short time and then lag behind very quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Chick-fil-A, right? I mean, Chick-fil-A is a good example. They actually, what I call push down authority. They push down authority all the way to the people that's serving you. I mean, they give that ability for that person on the line to make whatever your problem is right. They don't have to go get a manager. They are trusted to make the right decision. And keep in mind, these are young kids, but that trust, it makes them more accountable, and it makes them have the right mindset and make the right decision. And so it kind of feeds up and down from there.
It's kind of, here's the thing, to pile on to the pylon. The IT world makes everybody, it's an equalizer. There aren't a lot of just unique tools anymore. That's the purpose of ServiceNow, is to say you don't need 50 tools. You need one tool that can do it all. And pretty much ServiceNow can, or you can build it, or they're building it, and they release something new every 6 months. So if you've thought of it, if it's been a problem somewhere, somebody there is working on it, adding it to their platform. The differentiator is the people. And that's where, you take a company from being good to great, and from being great to excellent. I saw this a deal on analyzing Usain Bolt and his nearest competitor, whose name I forgot, and I apologize to whoever I'm offending for that. But here's the deal: everybody knows how to run, right? Whether we're good at it or not, everybody knows how to run. I look like a penguin trying to get out of the oil or something like that. But, everybody knows how to run. It's in the fundamentals and the technique where he goes from being an average runner to the fastest that there is. And there's a video out there where it breaks down, here's his foot and the way it's landing. And this is why it's more efficient than the person next to him. And here's how it goes. And that's really building, unless you build a company or an organizational culture where your people feel like they can grow and add value, they're not going to grow and add value. And it's a fundamental thing that you think of. But I run into like a lot of leaders that when I'm talking to them, they're like, well, things are working for us. And I'm like, okay, that's true. Things are working for us, but it's the same sense that I can run, but I work 500 times as hard to get to the same place as what Usain Bolt does when he's running, because he really, really, really practiced how to do it right.
Yeah, and I think, I'll throw out that part of what makes great to excellent is the ability to adapt to a changing environment. And I know that over the past few months that everybody is now beginning to wonder what resiliency looks like. But resiliency in an organization means the ability to try something and fail, the ability to trust that when you fail, you're not going to get fired, right? The ability to recognize that innovation is going to be rewarded, even if you're not doing even if you're not always doing exactly the right thing. And to continue the sports theme, Tiger Woods, when he was the best golfer in the world, actually rebuilt his golf swing twice. Mm-hmm. He was at the very top of his game, and he decided he was going to change his golf swing. Who does that? Yeah. Think about that from a business standpoint. How how crazy is it to think we're going to change the way we do business? We're the best in the world, and we're going to change the way we do business. It's the ability to recognize that you can adapt and do something slightly different, because there's always change, even within golf.
Yeah. And
well, I like the analogy of sailing. A lot of people think, I get in the water, I plot my course, and I go. But here's the thing: the current is always pushing from one side to the other against you. So you're constantly having to make corrections. Like 100% of the time, if you want to get to where you're going, you have to make corrections every second of that travel, or you're going to end up miles and miles and miles off. And that's the way businesses are. When you get to the point where you're like, oh, we're doing great, and I think that we should just protect what we're doing and not make any waves. Well, then you're actually falling farther and farther behind. You just don't know it yet.
Yeah, and I'll throw in a book for you to buy to keep on your bookshelf. There's an awesome book called Team of Teams from General Stanley McChrystal, and it's he's really specifically talking about the way that he led the military to change its fundamental approach. But the impetus for change came from an enemy that was able to adapt more quickly. If you look at militaries as a number of set pieces, and you go in and you have overwhelming strength. Well, we had overwhelming strength, and we still struggled. And what he found was that it was resiliency and adaptability that actually changed the way the organization worked in order to be able to understand that there's a different approach that fits this specific scenario. And it is what we've been talking about the past few minutes. It's all about enabling the people on the front with all of the information that they've got and the ability to adapt on their own.
Yeah.
All right. So real quick before we go any further, let's just take a quick break, and then we'll be back in just a couple of minutes after we listen to our wonderful sponsor, and then we'll be back to this awesome conversation. And I appreciate you guys holding on for just a minute.
This podcast was made with Anchor. Anchor is the easiest way to create and publish your podcast. It's free. Creation tools with it allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Helps you distribute your podcast. It's super simple to publish to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, any of the major ones. You can make money from your podcast. There's no minimum listenership, so they make it super easy to monetize. It's really everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So why don't you go out and download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm and get started.
All right, we're back with ServiceSharp. We are talking about everything today from leadership and service mapping and making good operational decisions and application mapping. So we were in the middle of a wonderful discussion, about leadership and change and being proactive in that change. And so one of the things that I wanted to kind of throw out there real quick is how many times do you know that guy who never makes a mistake? Well, the guy who never makes a mistake isn't pushing himself farther. My dad always told me growing up, if you aren't pushing yourself and you aren't making mistakes, that means that you're not going to become better. And as an organization, it's no different. You have to constantly be pushing yourself forward. And you're going to make mistakes. And that's okay. But it goes back to the agile methodology. Let's fail fast, right? So let's push forward. Let's take those risks. Let's make those mistakes. Let's pull ourselves up off the ground. And let's move forward with that. And that's where I see a lot of organizations kind of lack. But as you guys were saying, those organizations that support the bottom are doing, I think, just that. What do you think?
Well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's a culture that the ones that are moving to the top and are able to stay there are the ones that are pushing culture and not just solutions and technology and things like that. Because the tech and the tools are great, but too many companies rely on those things as the answer to their edge or to what they're doing. And the truth of the matter is, as soon as you do something well, somebody's going to study that and figure out how to make that their edge as well. And so you have to build culture trumps. You have to build the culture of excellence through failure that we've been talking about.
Yeah. So, out of curiosity, David, what do you think the thing you've consulted with a lot of different companies? What do you think their number one culture issue is?
That's a really good question. I would say that that probably why we've been sort of pounding the table on allowing the culture of failure and fail fast and actually I would even throw in fail early. The ability to allow people to innovate and think outside of their box is really where all of the companies are attempting to get today. Some of them are doing a beautiful job of it. Some of them are struggling, but I think it's really kind of ringing the same bell. Right now, we've got a fairly large number of companies that are looking very closely at figuring out what it is that they're good at to make sure that they're able to continue those conversations. Right? I mean, let's talk a little bit about what IT is. Everybody raise their hand if they work for an IT organization whose major capability is the ability to repair what they run on the inside.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Right. You don't have to be. And this is, I think this is a little bit contrary to where a lot of companies think they are, right? You do not have to have the best IT organization in the world in order to be efficient. You do, however, need parity, right? Yeah. You're unlikely to belong to a company whose major capability is the ability to run an organization, run an IT organization. You are very likely to be inside of an organization that that runs healthcare, not IT, that runs education, not IT, that runs that runs a consultancy and not IT, right? I mean, there's and that's one of the reasons that ServiceNow has eaten their competition, is the ability to know and understand and give visibility to how IT can run efficiently as IT, that then pulls people away from the operational tasks and allows them to do some innovation and investment level tasks. That you really start to see the change in the way organizations run more and more efficiently.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
if you're an IT organization and you feel like that your value comes from your ability to get things going when they break, you're missing the mark.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're likely to be replaced by robotic process automation soon.
Right.
That's not. I mean, everybody is talking about AI, and I can demonstrate for you the value of AI, but the kinds of things that AI does is run the correlations that help you get to the resolution faster. So if you're not able to learn how to work with the tools that are out there, again, back to where we started with service mapping, right? Bringing that context to what it is that you're delivering for the business or delivering to the business is how you start to get better. And humans can do that and machines can't. Service mapping accelerates the human's ability to get those answers.
That's exactly right. And most IT people aren't fluent in business, aren't fluent operations. I mean, there are quite a few savvy IT people out there, but by and large, a lot of IT organizations kind of like to live in a bubble of, the business wants to do this, but we're making this cool stuff or we're doing this cool thing. And the service mapping and the underlying, root cause analysis and things like that you go on, when you embrace that actually helps you talk the same language as the business. And so all of a sudden when you go to the board and you say, look, we're not going to make it unless we hire 3 more people that have this skill set, and this skill set, you got the data to back that up. You know what I mean? You've got the language to say that. You can go to them and say, look, if your strategic pillar is, I want to reduce costs by X amount, then you've got to spend money here because of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hate to say it, you're kind of you're begging me to start talking about the application portfolio management and some of the higher level thought processes that are actually available within ServiceNow, because service mapping gets you to a service level construct. Right. And then you can start attaching. You can use the service portfolio attaching to the application portfolio as the actual bridge to bringing those conversations directly to the business, right? And now you have business and IT talking exactly the same language.
Right. And isn't it great how when you bring in the application mapping, you can do things like analyze your duplicate applications. You can start having those, cross-platform conversations about where's the best to put these things. And I think it helps in a couple ways. I think one of the ways it helps is it breaks down silos. It pulls all the data in one place so everybody can come together and look at the data and make decisions effectively.
Yeah, and a lot of times, and I think because business leaders are not going to come to IT and say, help me understand, what inside that data center or what inside that cloud you're using, and if they do, they actually want to know what it costs, right? I mean, why does this thing cost so much? But IT often starts with, hey, I need $50 million because we have to upgrade every single Oracle instance that we've got. And the business is going to go, we're running fine, so no. But when you are able to turn that around and say, this system here, which is delivering this, is absolutely must be upgraded because these are the problems that we're having. This is what the cost is. This is how many people we could save. This is how much money we could save. The business says, awesome, I will invest $50 million in order to save 70. Yep, absolutely. And sometimes they'll invest $50 million to save $50 million in one, because they'll see that may be a first step to the next one. But you have to have the business language to be able to do that. You're highly unlikely to have that business language unless you've got some idea of how your services are held together, and then how that attaches to an application.
Well, and you're never going to get that picture built. You're not going to have the time to learn the business language, that's one of the crucial things about it. Until you embrace that and figure out, we've got to have this cohesive management. We've got to have visibility down to this level and up to this level. That's the only way you're going to free up the time to really, get that conversation where it needs to be.
And it is about moving people out of operational activities and into investment activities, right? Invest this amount of money because, this team of 10 is struggling. But if you invest a little bit of money, then we can reduce that team of 10 to a team of 8. Now you've got 2 more people. I mean, same budget, and you've got 2 more people to do something else with. Right? It's that level of reaction that allows people to where the business starts to go, oh, okay, I can do that.
And other benefit is you can throw away that sticky note that says reboot server X every Monday.
Yeah. Well, and the nice thing that I look at is there is a leadership coach I really like that says, do more of the important and less of the urgent. And the more of the important you do, the less of the urgent there will be. And that's what we're trying to get to here. And there's no tool in the world that can do what ServiceNow does on this front. And it gives such great insight and such good leadership insight to be able to make decisions effectively. And that's one thing that I've never found anybody be able to even say they come close to when it comes to, this kind of data and this kind of information.
Yeah, and making decisions visibly as well. It's not just that you can make the decisions, but you can, that sticky note that says this is important. can be recorded in the right place inside ServiceNow. And now everybody knows that it's important, not just the guy who had it in his office. Right? I mean, if it is important every morning to reboot that server, everybody should be able to know what that means and what the impact is. And that is partly what that portfolio view gives you is when the business says it's important, it's important. When IT says it's important, maybe not.
True. It's very true.
Hopefully, if you're doing the problem management part of it right, you figure out, why that sticky note was put there in the first place instead of just keeping it around.
Yeah, there are absolutely a lot of process ways to start to eliminate your sticky notes. But again, we were talking a little bit earlier about the importance of having executive leadership to support, and sometimes even direct what's going on. And I see a lot of IT organizations suffering from the lack of visibility of what's important because they don't know how to make the connections. Okay, people, that's where portfolio management and then that service mapping actually gives you the ability to say, this is important. And you should always be able to know what's important because when those relationships exist inside of your CMDB, boom, instantaneously, you always know what the impact is. If you've got 50 things to do, you have to know which one you've got to do first. It's not the first one you come across. It's the one that's the most important.
Well, and in the opposite side of that, the thing you will identify the things that are not important and maybe need to be retired.
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, there's a significant number of advantages, right? I mean, every time I have these conversations, I will tell you, I keep wanting to say, but wait, there's more. But wait, there's more. There's always that one more thing. We haven't even talked about the advantages to understanding what these mean from an IT asset management standpoint, right? I mean, the actual cost of the underlying infrastructure, right. The age of the underlying infrastructure. Throw in that security also needs to have some visibility. Security is not going to be able to go to the business to ask permission to shut off a service if they don't know what service it is that they need to shut off, and they can't explain to the business, right? I mean, all of this actually comes back into IT. For security is going to say, we have to shut this off. There's I can't give you really good details, otherwise you might guess what this business is. But there's a major media company that I was helping just a few months ago, where security came to them and they had a documented breach, and they were losing money, and they're losing a significant amount of money. And security said, we have to shut off these servers. And the business said, well, but what will that do to our business? And security said, I don't know. Mm-hmm. So this company bled money for months because they could not guarantee that would just that wouldn't stop income. Right? I mean, it was okay to have their IP stolen. It was okay to have all of this data drawn out of the business because the business was saying, well, wait a minute, if we shut that off, we won't make any money. We just cease to exist. And again, I mean, some of these are some frightening stories around the necessary components. And we have been talking a lot of times about what the operational effect is, but that operational effect is so huge to what the business is actually doing that the advantages across the platform are just enormous.
Yeah, absolutely.
While on the security side of it, I mean, your security group does not have a chance at keeping you safe if you don't have some sort of really highly integrated, service mapping, asset management going on.
Yeah, since I'm telling war stories, I was consulting with a state government, and they had a mandate for for systems to be a certain level of compliance. And all he cared about was that all systems had that level of compliance. And I think I argued with him for probably 3 days that not all systems needed to be that level of compliant. And he's like, look, this law says so right here. And I go, I'm relatively certain that the law does not say that, because really the actual effect of what he was asking for was everything that's a fire requires 4 alarms. And I was saying, sometimes you need one guy in a pickup truck with a pump up sprayer. You don't need to bring out your entire fire department. And the only way to differentiate between the two is to actually know what's running what. And I will tell you that I lost that battle for a long time until the right person in the right place was able to say, okay, now the actual effect is we're being less secure because we don't know what a priority looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I've seen that in companies of all different sizes, that same kind of scenario play out over and over, where it's like somebody's got stuck. No, this is what this interpretation is, and there's nothing else that you're going to ever say that's going to get me off that interpretation. I just want to sit over here and hemorrhage money until I bleed to death and someone takes over for me.
Yeah, and I will say that the major problem that I see companies do, governmental agencies and governmental supported agencies are different beasts, but the number one thing that I see businesses have a problem with is that a lot of the people in security think that security rules, when in fact all security postures, say for one, all security postures are a business decision. If the business says we're going to run insecure, the business gets to make that decision. Now, the one exception is compliance for PCI, which there are specific things that you must do, and you're either across the line or you're not. But security often says must do because security says so. That's really not true. It's must do because the business says so.
Well, there's some incumbent pressure on the business to actually define what their risk levels are. This is what we're willing to tolerate. Because when they don't, then security kind of tries to define that for them.
Well, and security likes to do security. Just like IT likes to do IT. If you threw a bunch of computers at me, I could be happy for a long time because I like to play. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to produce a business outcome. And I think that's the same thing with security. Security likes things to be secure, but you really have to understand what that posture looks like. And you're never going to be able to achieve your posture if you don't have a good idea of what these things are. And don't get me wrong, I will go back to saying I see a significant, as in a vast majority of companies that don't know. Yeah. So getting to the posture where and your competition still doesn't know, you're already ahead of the game.
Yeah. And getting on top of, to bring it back to the service mapping, getting on top of that allows you to define that barrier between risk management and productivity, because, the ultimate security is to take your data and bury it on a planet that has no other person on it. But it's not functional. You know what I mean? But, security, that's what they want. Lock. But it's got to be, you got to figure out, where that value stream is. And unless you have the data, readily available. And the thing is, it changes from day to day and moment to moment where that magic stream, lines up.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you are looking at some security there, just plug ServiceNow again. There is a way to expose what that data architecture looks like directly within the application portfolio. So there are so many advantages to having that full ITX platform view.
Well, and I tell you, the experience that I have with so many companies with ServiceNow is they buy it for a problem that they're having, and they only want to necessarily apply the platform to that problem, and they completely miss out on this point that if they really, 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 really want to maximize their investment and take the money that they're spending and turning it into profit for the company, you need to do the whole thing. You need to get all the data that you can get and all the processes that you can get under that one roof.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would agree. I mean, I will tell you, we consult with companies where a single roof is never gonna work. But this roof can certainly cover a significant amount. And I'll say that this really is how you get your house in order to be able to leave and go do other things instead of just maintaining your house.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were to give David one piece of advice, one piece of advice that you want people to take away from this meeting and from this call and this podcast, what would that be? What would that one thing be?
We started talking about service mapping, and I think that was a really good entry point for what we ended up talking about through this whole podcast. And I'm going to go a little bit philosophical here. It is best to know what it is that you do and why you do it, because that's the only way you're going to know how you're going to get better, whether or not you're going to be able to continue to compete. Service mapping is a critical component of understanding how you do something, but recognizing that not everything that you do is everything that you must do or everything that you need to do. That you start to recognize that no company, no matter how large their budget, has an unlimited budget. They are going to invest things in a way that gets them more advantages within their market. So you have to focus on what it is that you do in order to say, okay, I'm going to invest into making this thing better. It's not just leveraging your operational costs to get your investments better, but recognizing that I need to be able to do this thing really, really well because that's where my market is.
Right. And if you guys haven't read The Phoenix Project, great book. It talks about some of this as well. And so, Randy, Brent, is there any? I know that we've kind of pushed it on the time here, so I was hoping we'd wrap it up here. So I wanted to see if there's anything else you guys wanted to kind of say to kind of close this out.
No, I'm good tonight.
Okay, all right.
I think I better stay away from the soapbox.
Well, I will promise that if you ever invite me back, I'll try to talk less.
I tell you what, I've really, really enjoyed the conversation. I know that I think that it's a folly to try to put together a podcast about technology and not talk about the leadership and not talk about the philosophy and culture sometimes, because it's the philosophy and culture that drives whether you're going to get the use out of it. So I'd love to continue the conversation and have you back.
Absolutely. And I've said it elsewhere and I'll say it here too. Every company packages and ships their culture. So culture is everything that your company is. So you've got to be really careful with it.
Absolutely. All right, guys. So keep in mind, everybody who's listening, like, share, make sure that we get this to all of our friends and family. Everybody needs to hear this because it is ServiceNow, and ServiceNow is awesome. So even people who are not in IT, just send it to them anyway. We want everybody to listen to it. Remember that you can send us an email. You can send us some information through LinkedIn, call us, text, whatever way you want to get a hold of us. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions, put it in the, send us an email, and we will try and answer those questions, or we'd love to also bring you on a podcast if you guys have a bunch of questions you really need answered. Okay, well, thank you for joining us, and until next time. See you guys.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you very much.
We want to thank our flagship sponsor for this show, the Sharpstone Group, LLC. Sharpstone is your source for all of your ServiceNow needs. Implementation, development, administration, strategy, and architecture. Contact the Sharpstone Group today at info@sharpstonegroup.com or 405-594-0100. We'd love to answer your questions or have you on the show. Contact us at ServiceSharp@sharpstonegroup.com or find our LinkedIn info in the notes. Additional sponsorship opportunities are available.